Okay, today's Q&A is about urns, and the question is, why in the world are they selling hot water urns in a farm store? And on top of that, it's got a hechsher on it, no less. I mean, what does a hechsher and a farm store have to do with an urn? So the answer to that is like this. Over the years, hechsher has become like a rabbinic stamp of approval on something, even if it's not a food-related thing. Like, for example, there are hechsherim on ritzuas for tefillin, so you know that they were made according to the halacha, they were made properly. So for an urn, the hechsher is there for one or more of these three things, and that is Shabbos use, Yom Tov use, and Tefillas Kelm. And let me explain each of those. The first is for Shabbos. A person is not allowed to heat up water on Shabbos, but they're allowed to take water out of a pot. That's okay. So when you have an electric urn, you want to make sure that that it's possible to get the water out, without using electricity, like without turning on a pump, and also make sure like that light doesn't go on when you take the water out and things like that. And there's water. There's something called a level indicator, like in the front of the urn. There'll be something that shows you how much water is in there. Sometimes those level indicators, the water there doesn't get so hot. So depending on different people are particular, that maybe to make sure that water actually gets hot as part of the heating process, or else there's a problem with bishul on Shabbos. Maybe you'll be heating up that water as you take out water on Shabbos. That's for Shabbos. Now, a lot of what I just said doesn't make a difference on Yom Tov. Nothing wrong with cooking up water on Yom Tov, although you can't use electricity, but no problem with cooking up water. But on Yom Tov, what happens is that people want to add water to their urn. As they use up the water, they want to add more because you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov. So there are some of those urns where when you add fresh water, cold water, then the thermostat in the urn says time to turn on. So basically putting water in instantly turns on the heating coil, and that's something that you're not allowed to do on Yom Tov. You're not allowed to turn on the heating coil on Yom Tov. So there's a bunch of different ways that urn companies have come up with to get around this issue. For example, and sometimes when it's set on the Shabbos or Yom Tov mode, it keeps a coil on low the whole time. It's always going on low, so when you put in the water, it doesn't make any difference to it. Other ones have it that there's a timer that basically turns on the coil every couple of minutes, no matter what, whether you put water in or not. It pays no attention to the thermostat for when it turns on. Whether it stays on may depend on the thermostat, but turning on has nothing to do with the thermostat. So that's another way they do it, and there may be other ways that people have of avoiding this problem of having it turn on right away. So again, the hechsher there is to say to you that someone's made sure that it is okay to add cold water on Yom Tov into this urn. Okay, and the last thing is Tefillas Kelm, and that is that anything that you use for eating or cooking that's made of metal or glass needs to have Tefillas Kelm before you use it, if you buy it from someone who's not Jewish. And the problem is that when you have something electrical that could be ruined by submerging it in water, by sticking it into the mikveh. So some people hold that you don't need to type things that are electric because they might break. That's one way of looking at it. But a person who's buying an urn with a hechsher about the Tefillas Kelm is trying to figure out a way that he should not be required to do Tefillas Kelm, aside from the fact that it's electric. So what they'll do is they make sure that this urn has been owned by somebody Jewish from the very beginning, from when it was made all the way until it reaches your hands, because Tefillas Kelm was only required if it was owned by someone not Jewish at some point. So what they'll do is they have to make sure there were proper kinyanim. Those are the technical ways that a Jewish takes ownership of the metal and the other parts that are used in making the urn. They have to make sure you avoid problems of umin koine b'shvach, which is to say when the non-Jewish person builds the urn, he has certain rights or ownership to it as well. Then also after that, it has to stay in Jewish ownership from the time it was made all the way till it gets to your house, which is to say it can't be sold in a traditional store, which is owned by non-Jews, so it'll have to be sold through a Jewish distribution channel, like through a Svarim store or like through a Jewish supermarket. Again, making sure that it stays in Jewish ownership the whole time, and that's in fact what the hechsher would be on, to keep an eye on all of these items.